Sorry, I'm doing a mic test. Trying to figure out what decibel range to use. Let's see here. Not gonna need desktop audio, I don't think. Let me see here. Yeah, Railroad Preserver 2000, back again doing another live stream here. Oh dear, my phone's nearly dead. Plug that in. That one fire department around here gets all the dang calls, I swear. Anyways, I'm presently back doing the Paint 3D map drawing for High Iron and the map that I was going to do. I actually need to start getting my other drawings out so I can follow them, but that's no issue. Let me see. I'm going to get the stream open on my phone so I can monitor all that. Yeah, also, if you're curious, I was able to restore some Stormworks game footage. So, yeah, there's that. So not only is that stuff premiering, I'm also filming this too at the same time. So just let me see. Does it even show that I'm live? Okay, good, it does. I'm sorry I don't have a dedicated thumbnail for this, but I really don't know how else to do it. There we go. Let me see here. Top messages, all messages. There we go. Right. So there is that. I love my water bottle. I love when you can just use your water bottle like a bill. But let me see. Let me get the stream stuff out of the way. There we go. So this is the industry I'm going to try and replicate next. It's the well, this. I don't think I'll be able to replicate it 100%, but given that Athens' industrial park bleeds into Hull, Georgia, I figured why not. So let me see. What was that? Oh, I'm looking at my own stream. Never mind. Let me see here. I just hope you guys like what I've posted because I genuinely, I don't know if anyone is even interested or likes what I'm filming and posting to the channel. Hasn't been any like comments or feedback on any of the gaming stuff, so I'm admittedly a little worried, you know? Let me see here. And I'm making this so that, and also all the space between the different industries and buildings and stuff is meant to be like, you know, lawn space, parking lots, roads, etc. Okay, I wonder if I could might get away with this by doing a curve. Let me see. Let me zoom in. There we go. Move you over here. And yes, I can. I just have to turn it around. Is there any way to do this without? Nope, there's not. Okay. There we go. Actually, that worked beautifully. Okay, and I want to stress this is a separate industry from the other one. This one seems to utilize plastic pellets, so with that in mind, I'm going to assume that's it right there. Okay, so we have our turnout track, which I'll need to redo because I just realized how much space it took up. Because I'm basing the spacing on what I'm seeing here. There's like a triangle of barren land between the spur and the main line. There we go. I think that's going to be about as close as I can get it there. Yeah, there we go. Okay, some brushes. There's our stop point. Let's see. Now the fun part's going to be building the warehouse. Because what I'm thinking is, if this is not enough room, I may just move it down here and do the warehouse here, because you have this other huge mill area here that I tried to replicate as best as I could, outline-wise. I couldn't get everything, because some of this trackage actually goes under, like, shed-type structures and whatnot. These sidings here are at least open. Here's the other industry, which is right there. And then here's this one. So as you can see, there must be it must be some sort of plastic pellet thing. So it seems, because they've got like a pipe thing here, probably some sort of hose or something. I haven't been able to find a Google image of this where the spur is actually void of cars, so it's hard to see what this is. I'm imagining there's some sort of concrete base here with a piping system, I guess, running along it that merges in with this building here. Then it runs to these silos right there. Okay, I'm just leveling it out. There we go. Okay. I wish there was a way to turn the whole canvas like you can do in Google Maps. That'd be nice. Though, alternatively, what I could try to do, even though I doubt it would work, is I could have the spur on this side, I guess. I don't know. You know what? Let me just... There we go. Perfect. Let me just do this again. Let me just see here. No. And I want to stress, I'm doing the industrial areas first before I go and like fill in the land and all, because then I'll have more control. I want to get everything put in first. Industry first, town layout second, other details third. Gives you a bit of an idea of how I might do something like this. Okay. Alright, let me just put this spur right down here, have it to be the last one. This is meant to be a very zoomed out, like, bird's eye view, as it were. Let's see, so the building looks like it juts out a bit. Okay. Dragging it back so I have some room. There we go. There's that, and then there's like an office portion right there. So that'd be the company offices. So, yoink. So there's that. Okay, so it's got both rail and truck area entrances. There we go. So I think what it is the raw material comes in by rail, which makes the most sense. Employee parking, and then the finished products of which is whatever they make goes out by truck. That's got to be how they do it. Now for this weird delivery system of theirs. So there's some sort of pipe system here that then merges into one and goes into this silo system. Okay, so I got to figure out how I'm going to draw this. Okay, so I'm going to assume one outbuilding is there, maybe? Yeah. Gonna make sure it's level. There we go. The thickness about there, maybe? Okay, there's that. Now I need to go to lines. Oh, there we go. There's a perfect shot right there. Okay, yeah, so there must be a sort of loading thing there that unloads the plastic pellets underneath, and then it's all funneled into those pipes and then taken into the building there. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, yeah, look, they've added another tank, so there's going to be like, yeah, right there. 7 tanks, and there's room for another one. Okay. Okay. I'm going to assume this must be some sort of pad or something. So with that in mind, let me try to move here. And again, this spur here can go and hold apparently 4 to 5 rail cars easily. So that tells me that what they have here is meant to hold around 4 to 5 rail cars. Okay, so there's a tiny building right there. Let me go to brushes. Let me get this. There we go. Turn the thickness down. A little more. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to just go in and add 8 tanks because it won't surprise me given that they have room for another tank. It makes perfect sense that they'll add another one. So there's that. Now the pipe, which will go out to here, I think. Yeah. There's one there. There's one there. And then a real, I guess what that must be like a really teeny tiny control building. So there's that. It's very crude, very, very crude, but it doesn't have to be exact, you know? At least I'm trying to add stuff. And then there's your, I guess, HVAC and all your coolant stuff and whatnot. So there's that. Now, okay, so there's that industry. So there's room here for a very small one, so I think I'll add just a small. Hello? Hello? Let me see. So there's, I think, a warehouse right there. There's going to be another warehouse type spur here. Real small one. There we go. So there's one section of industrial area done. There's another with more than enough room for other industries. Then there's this, which also just has more room for industry. And then here, let me see. Now, if you'll notice, what I've done is I've actually given spurs for each industrial district, so they'd have their own sort of you know, they would have their own, I guess, distinct, there's a word for it. Each cluster of industry has its own dedicated rail spur that services all of them at once. Like you got one, two, three, four manufacturing plants here, one, two warehouses here, a scrapyard here, another warehouse here, one of two, and then an automotive plant, a mill. So yeah, there's a lot of industry here. Right now, I'm just looking to see if there's anything else that I could add that I might have missed. So you can see there's actually like one or two industries here. And if you look, you can actually see that this spur here is no longer in service. In fact, I actually have it removed here too. I just can't tell what they make. Though that greenish color looks a bit concerning, not gonna lie. I'm guessing it's some sort of plastic, I guess. I really don't know. Ooh. That's interesting. There's like a silo back there. Weird. And then this industry was once served by rail. There was a spur going in right here that was ripped out. And then there's the scrapyard. And then this was this here was the last bit I needed to do, which was this bunch of spurs here. So that spur dead ended right in these trees. It, of course, was, as you can see, completely ripped out. Because this here has all been, yeah, right here. Here's where the spur used to be. It was ripped out. There's where the crossing was. I never bothered to look and see if there was any trackage left. I can see there, you can still see the old turnout. And there's where the track used to be right there. In fact, see, it was completely isolated. The CSX came and basically ripped all this remaining industry spur trackage out because they just didn't use rail anymore. There was once an industrial siding all along here. If I look further back, you can see it. See, there it is right there. There's the siding. There's the turnout right there. There's a spur, and then there's another spur. You can tell they don't use rail anymore because all this stuff was gone by 2017. So that's when they ripped the track up. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to replicate this warehouse area here on this side to fill this in. I'm going to get rid of that because I didn't mean for that to happen. Before I do anything else, I'm going to control save. That way I don't lose any progress. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. Yeah, so you can actually see where they ripped up the switch and all that. Ha, now see? Here's where the scrapyard really had, like... Well, now see, that makes perfect sense. Now that's interesting. So the scrapyard must have had a lot of stuff coming in and out when this was taken in 2012. Tells you Athens doesn't want to be an industrial city anymore. Because you can see the scrapyard just stored tons of scrap guns and whatnot all around here, like on any available siding that was left back in 2012. Right here is surprising to me. You can see this was a massive, massive industrial track here. Of course, you can see that it was ripped up. So you can see that this would have all been industrial land here, because they would have had an industry track going all the way down to here, perhaps. And that's all been ripped up. That's all completely gone. And there's the warehouse spur, as I remember it, which would be right in here on this industrial track, which is on a siding, which is what I have here. So let me go to my canvas, or rather, the select canvas, rotate. There we go, perfect. And I'll add the gray roads in later. I'm going to try and color code things on the map so I can figure out, so that me and others can, tell what's what. Okay, so with this in mind, and yes, I'm reversing it because I need to, I'm doing this sort of in reverse, really. Let me see here. Ah, crap. I knew it was going to do that. I knew it was going to do that. There's a glitch where if you're in this thing and it does... I can't explain it, but there's a glitch that happens where if you try to go from canvas to brushes, it'll cut off part of the... part of the canvas, and I don't like that. I really don't. Okay, 2D shapes. And since, of course, this is going to be a fictional version of this warehouse thing, which you know what I mean, my brain. Since this is going to be a fictional version of this warehouse thing, this means that this will be what it looks like, would have looked like had rail service not stopped. So there's the start of that spur here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have all the warehouses and stuff this would have served. So all this entire area here, I'm going to have it all be all in this general vicinity between this mill here and all this. Okay, so with this in mind, I wish they had like a leveler thing or something. So yeah, as you can see, I think I'm going more for like a city or something instead of a freaking small town. That's what I mean when I said I was going to redo this thing. And it's either going to be a small town or maybe a fairly mid-sized town. So one that's fairly big, that's big enough to have all this industry, but not so big that it would be classified as a city. I'd say maybe just under it. And all the spaces in between the buildings and whatnot would be where railroad crossings are. There'd be a lot of industrial roads and whatnot around this to serve all the various industries and whatnot. So they'd be truck routes, truck and car routes, is what I'm thinking. So that would mean there'd be a kind of railroad overpass, so that the road would duck underneath. You wouldn't be able to put a railroad crossing here. Okay, let me go back to canvas now, and I'm going to reverse this again. There we go. There we go. I think that's enough. Surely. Because, yeah, there was sidings here. I do remember this. Yeah. Yeah, now here's what it looked like when it was all open. So it almost looks like that industrial spur pretty much was ripped. I don't know. It's weird. Oh, wow. There's Athens Tech back then. My God. So there's. Okay, so there's the crossing. There's the spur. So there was a okay. So yeah, this was a spur. So there was a siding for this industry here. I can't tell if there was one for these. I really can't tell. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there was a siding right here for this brewery. I do remember that. There was the refrigeration thing. And then I guess there was another spur. It looks like there's a switch there, but I can't tell. And I guess it served this, but I can't tell for how long. Okay. I'll just have to make some assumptions here, I'm afraid, because I really can't tell. What's really annoying is the fact that I can't tell when a lot of this was last used because it's hard. My brain. Curse me and my horrible eyesight. I can't tell if there's a freaking siding or not. It's very, very hard to tell. And it also doesn't help that I can't get what I need because the freaking map keeps glitching every 2 seconds. Alright. I'm gonna just assume that that's what the thing may have looked like. I don't know because I can't get. You know what I mean. So there's the stop thing. So that's this siding right here for the brewery. What I'm confused about is it almost looks like there was another spur right here, but I can't tell. I really cannot tell. And the early imagery really doesn't help because, again, I can't tell. It's hard to see. I can already tell you this is out of date. So the single spur was left, but I just can't tell. There's what's left of the other spur. It was ripped out. I do remember that. Okay, let me see here. 2D shapes. Yeah, I'm basically having to do this in reverse. So you talk about interesting, aka tricky AF. Well, this is it. There's that. And I'm going to assume for a minute that there was a spur here, and I say this because when I look at the side of the building, it looks like there was enough room. There's traces of what looks like ballast, and there's also enough room for there to have been a spur here, like a switch. Now, I don't know how far back it went, but I'm going to assume. There we go. There's the proof I needed. Those look like warehouse entrances, or like warehouse doors. Bingo, right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those look like old loading dock entrances for like boxcars and stuff. So with that in mind, that tells me there was a spur there. Okay. And that tells me also that, oh yeah, look here. Look here. Okay. So there was spurs on either side. Yeah. This would have had branch offs on each side because you can see where the old loading dock doors were. One there, one there. And this one here could have even been rail served at one point. I didn't even think about that. Because I think all of these were like refrigeration warehouses and stuff for like breweries and whatnot. But again, I'm not sure. Like, this was like I think a distribution center of some kind. I don't remember. But the fact that there's warehouse doors on a lot of these buildings tells me that this was a industrial spur here, and you had stub end sidings that branched off on either side at varying lengths. Okay, well, that settles it, and there's evidence of this right here. Now, whether or not those are actually old industrial sidings, now whether or not these were old loading docks, I'm not sure. I genuinely don't know. But given the space on either side of the track, it doesn't surprise me one bit if that is the case. I'm going to assume the spur was rather short, so it probably went from, say, maybe here to about maybe somewhere in here and then stopped. Because that looks to be the extent the loading docks go to. So, with this in mind, let us once again add a spur. If I make a legend, I should make a line legend too to show what each line and its thickness means. Like the yellow is like property lines, gray is road, the real thick black lines are the railroad lines, and then I guess this could be like spur sidings. I don't know. Thing is, I'm too deep into this to just go back and redo everything. So there's our spur siding. And remember, I'm doing this the opposite way. What you see on Google Maps is something I'm doing on Paint 3D in the opposite orientation. So I'm going to assume that this spur Went to about there and stopped, maybe? Question mark? I don't know. Okay, brushes, pen, this. There's our stopgap. And this is, by the way, a very huge warehouse. The fact you can see it from space should tell you all you need to know. So rail and trucking is what they do now. They, I don't think they've been rail served in over a decade or more. So, yeah. But you can see that it looks almost like they've had that in mind originally because the building has a slight depression right here, indicating of potentially a curve, like a stub siding. But again, I am not sure. All right, I am not sure. I'm gonna save this so I can protect what I've got so far. You can see they added on to the building here. I think the spurt ended right here, I think. Now again, this is a very, very, very rough mock-up of this. Okay, there's that. So now the fun part for me is going to be seeing where each of these sidings for these two warehouses here were. Because one is smaller than the other. In fact, there's one, there's another. I'm going to assume... I mean, the good news, though, is I know exactly where the siding was because the old warehouse doors are still there. They just bricked them up after the rail service was stopped. So I'll just have to assume the stub end switch for this started somewhere in here and just gently sloped back and then stopped probably right there. Because you can see there was 4 loading docks, so that's room for 4 boxcars. Okay. So what I'm going to do now, and thank goodness this doesn't have an end cap, is I'm going to expand the spur to actually include these 2 warehouses because I'm curious as to what they would have done. Let me see, 2D shapes, there we go. All right, now let's see. Hmm. So seeing as this one had room for, I think, 3 rail cars, or 4, excuse me, so 4 box cars, there'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. There's that. Brushes, EpiPen. Gonna bonk that there. There we go. Thank God this building is just a giant rectangle. 2D shapes. there's that warehouse. I'm going to expand the spur a little bit to include a room for this smaller one, which looks like it could have held potentially 2, maybe 3 boxcars. I'm not sure, though it would make sense, especially if we're talking the larger boxcars that came out back in like the 70s and 80s. There we go. I think that should be plenty of room because these aren't spaced close together at all. In fact, you can see here where the property line is with those barriers. Okay. There's that. These are just symbolizing the little concrete barriers between the property lines, and they're being unevenly spaced because that's how they are IRL. So I'm guessing that's what this little industrial spur would have looked like. Hmm. I think this could be like a wood yard maybe. So I'll add a spur there. I'm very tempted to just connect both spurs with this, but I'm not sure. Like, I really am not sure. Okay, I'm gonna make this area just a massive, massive wood yard. I think. I can't decide. Let's see. Dirt pile, and dirt pile. There we go. So this sort of is going to be, let me go back to my files. Yeah, this is what I'm going to try and replicate here. So it's going to be like a mill. Let me see here. Hmm. I can't tell if this is still live. It seems to be. Okay, let me see here. Nope. Okay, so this whole spur is going to have to go now. There we go. Okay, let's see here. Okay, there we go. We are still on. Okay, that helps. I do remember that this. I do remember that this entire thing was literally a semi-fictional mill. It was big enough. I mean, I know the complex was big enough. The property was big enough to where it would warrant its own two switchers. So, two switchers on site. Could be leased units, could be older units the mill bought and just allowed to decay paint scheme wise to the point where there's no legible markings left. The original idea I had was that they were a pair of 30s era SW1 units, so really old power, so on pretty much its last legs, the sort of last assignments, as it were. Let's see. So there's the entrance track there. Now, before those on High Iron who are maybe watch this later, before you guys go and freak out, this is a very rudimentary sighting, okay? So just roll with it. Literally. There we go. There's a small siding. Or actually, a very makeshift siding, I should say. Whoops. Let me go to brushes. Let me go to eraser. Let me just get a little buzz cut. There we go. Let me go to 2D shapes again. This ain't gonna work. Alright, let me try a line and curve and see how this goes. I think my eyesight is failing me because I'm having to get really close in. I think that's about as good as I'm going to be able to get. All right. Okay. Let's save that. There we go. And I'll be right back. And I'm back, but I'm going to be muted because I'm going to be eating some popcorn, so I don't think anyone wants to hear that.